Welcome to Flavor Text, a podcast where we examine the intersection between lore, story, and gameplay in Arkham Horror, the card game. I'm CrabbyTerror8, and as always, I'm joined by my jubilant colleague, Kevling.
Oh, very good, yes, very good. Very timely. Yes. Hello.
Congratulations.
Yes, that's 70 years on the throne for me, yes. Thank you very much. I don't think I look that bad for my age. Yeah.
The thing that freaks me out is the Queen's always seemed old to me. Even when I was a kid, she was middle-aged.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Longest reigning monarch ever or something, I think she is now.
Yeah, I think...
Well, she has been for some time.
Yeah, because I think Queen Victoria was before or something. So, yeah, wow. Anyway, apart from waving Union Jacks and getting out the mugs and plates, Kevling, what else have you been doing?
What have I been doing? Arkham-wise, played my latest game for the League of Extraordinary Investigators. I gather yours went slightly worse than mine.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. I mean, it was the... For those that aren't aware, League of Extraordinary Investigators is a solo, semi-competitive league. We're working our way through the B half of Dream Eaters, and the latest scenario we just did was the final one, Weaver of the Cosmos. So I got all the way, I defeated 4 legs of Atlatnacha, but I mistimed the defeating of the 4th leg, which meant that Atlatnacha spawned on me, attacked me, and then attacked me instantly again on the Mythos phase, and so... See, I was playing Gloria. She only had 5 health to start with anyway, and she started that scenario with 2 mental trauma, so she really only had 3 health. So to actually get that far, I think was quite an achievement for an old woman with a typewriter.
Absolutely.
Other games-wise, I've been playing a bit of Warhammer with my youngest. They are continually slaughtering me at that, in the same way that Arkham continually slaughters me, so there's definitely a common theme there. But that's pretty much it for me games-wise this week. I'll be playing Ratchet and Clank on the PS5.
Oh, nice.
I picked up that cheap.
Oh, okay.
So yes, that's very, very nice, very pretty, and it's the first game I played that makes my PS5 fan roar just like the PS4 used to do.
Right.
So I've got a nice bit of nostalgia going on there.
Brilliant.
And what about you then? What have you been up to?
Yes, the League. So yes, I brought it on myself doing a blind playthrough and doing a chaos deck. So that was my cover, So if I do badly, I can't be blamed. But I didn't leave the first location. I literally. I got 1 draw that I passed, and all the rest I failed, and I just died horribly to a swarm of rats. I pulled 3 auto fails and 3 or 4 skulls, which were -4. Like literally, again and again and again. It was.
That's awesome.
It was just horrendous. So, anyway,
Who are you playing again?
Trash Can Pete. So yeah. Sorry, Ash Cam. I always call him Trash Can Pete. So yeah. Yeah.
I knew you. You were playing Duke.
Yeah, exactly. So, it was 3 minutes. The whole game streamed for 3 minutes. And then I died. And that 3 minutes included me reading the background. So that's how bad it was. I mean, it was really horrendous. Wow. It was like, failed. 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 Rats. Missed. Retaliate. Failed. It was just like, it was just...
I think I might have to watch that. Yeah. Or have you quickly took it down again for embarrassment?
It's only available privately. Let's just put it that way. Yes, that wasn't great.
Wow.
And apart from that, more Elden Ring. I've put in more than 200 hours into it now. I'm level 120 something. So I must be in the final 25% of the game now. So I'm getting there slowly but surely. Fantastic. So I'm going to 100% it. So I'm going to be at it for quite a while yet. Yeah. So yes.
You're on PlayStation playing it, yeah?
No, I'm.
So you're going to.
Yeah, I'm on X.
I was going to say you're going to go for the platinum then, but no, obviously not.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, our PS5, there's artifacting that happens when we use not the PS4 version, but the PS5 version of Elden Ring. Constant flashes of little colours, and I don't know what's going on. So, yeah,
very strange.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think I seem to remember seeing an article at the time that actually you're better off playing the PS4 version on the PS5.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Yes. So yes, enjoying that very much. Well, after 200 hours, you'd hope so. So, yes.
You're just torturing yourself the entire time.
That's right. Oh, even today, I was just anyway. Too many rage quits, too much raging. It really gets me going. So I shouldn't play. It's not good for my blood pressure, but anyway. Yes. So I know we're going to be talking about A Phantom of Truth, but amazingly, and thank you to everybody who wrote in, we've had a ton of feedback and mail, which is just brilliant. So quite a lot, actually.
It is. People are actually listening.
They're actually listening. And I just want to make a broad point that if we say anything, if we criticize anything else, I'm not talking about anyone specifically here, but we do it out of love and respect because we love this game so much. So, if we're saying, look, the gameplay doesn't fit the story or the mechanics kind of undercut the story, it's not because we don't love playing it. It's just that, we're just being respectful in our criticism where it comes from a place of love, not from a place of hate or anything like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'll read the first two out because they're both on a very similar theme. So the first one was from Starwish, who left a comment on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for that. So they said, I don't think it's really that convoluted when essentially there is three ways to interpret the story, one of which makes a lot of sense why Daniel might show up in your room dead. So I think that was our comment that it was a bit jarring for the way the scenario finished and Daniel was just there. Dead in your room on one of the resolutions.
Yes, exactly.
And then on a similar theme, Great Arse Goblin on Reddit said a similar point, saying, good episode, guys. I really enjoy your perspectives. I do, however, think you may be taking the Carcosa campaign a little too literally. I think a lot of the events, cards and resolutions that you find are too convenient, unrealistic, are just that. The investigators are likely convincing themselves of certain events and are actually just hallucinating. For example, why is Daniel's body in the hotel room? It could just be because the investigators brought him here and killed him themselves. They create a narrative to support their insanity in the resolution. On the other hand, when the narrator talks about the experimental treatment employed by Dr. Minsk, you mentioned that he may be creating monsters. I would say that it's actually that the investigators are again imagining monsters and the card arts are helping the game itself to be an unreliable narrator. Obviously, both interpretations are equally plausible, and that's why this campaign is so great. You never really know what is actually happening. So, I think he's probably got a point there that we have been taking quite a bit of it literally. I don't think we'll be taking it completely literally.
No.
We have talked about the doubt and conviction and how we're not really sure what is really going on a few times, but I think taking that on board when we think of something that is happening. And like we said, it was a bit jarring the way that seemed to happen. Yeah, the doubt and conviction could be playing into that.
Yeah,
that surprise or that inconvenient thing we've just found or convenient thing we've just found, etc. So yeah, thank you very much for that great arse goblin. So I'm saying arse instead of ass because I'm British.
and I agree with both of them. I think I think what the great thing about this campaign is the ambiguity, and ambiguity is a great part of horror. The idea you don't really know what's going on. Can you really trust it? Even as a player, you can't really trust your own senses. The game itself asks you to question yourself as much as anything, which is fantastic.
I was going to say, we've found whole sides of acts and agenda cards that you're not even supposed to
Exactly.
read. Why are you reading this? And we're going to see another example of that today as well.
Exactly, which is fantastic. And I think it's for those reasons why this campaign is so beloved and still the most popular of all, because it does things that I don't think any of the other campaigns do because of that unreliable narration. So I think that's absolutely true. I think, though, around the story, I just think that sometimes, like, you can't have complete Deus Ex Machina where, well, anything can happen and therefore any outcome is fine. I just think that one where he turns up dead, it's like, it's sort of out of the blue and it's just not very satisfying. I think it's more contrived rather than anything. I think it could have been done in all kinds of crazy ways, but it just felt a little bit contrived that he conveniently turned up dead without a lot of explanation. So it kind of took you out of the immersion of the story in a way, which I don't think the others do. So I think that's the thing about it. But like Great Ass Goblin said, any interpretation is completely fine, and because like you say, the unreliability means who knows what's really going on. So yep.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you to both of you for those comments.
We also received a wonderful email from a fan of the show. I think it's Athanasis, I think is the way that you pronounce it. Look, it's too long to recite the whole thing, but he says that Echoes of the Past are definitely one of the weakest scenarios in the campaign. And I think we agreed with that. So I'm excited to hear you're discussing my personal highlights of the Unspeakable Oath. Of course, doubt and conviction are the mechanics used to translate the madness question into scenario decisions, setup and progression. Interestingly, however, this mechanic does not answer the question of whether the investigators are actually insane. It only answers the question of how the investigators themselves interpret what they've experienced. This is an important point about the mechanics how the mechanics reinforce the idea of narrative unreliability. And I think that's a really great point, that doubt and conviction feeds into that ambiguity in a really nice way. So that's one of the great things about Carcosa, is that the systems support that sort of doubt and ambiguity in that way. And he goes on that only several Doom tokens later do the insane residents of the asylum, so he's now talking about the Unspeakable Oath, come along, who of course react aggressively to the investigators, or are they perhaps already an expression of our protagonist's increasing paranoia? The madness mechanism is clearly recognizable when you have to collect the monsters in their own deck, where they wait to be shuffled into the encounter deck. The whole thing is additionally underpinned from the start by the flavor text, which can be read as if the investigators are welcomed by the orderlies as inmates. And does the abandoned cell in the basement of the asylum seem familiar to characters because they were once there themselves? So I think, again, he highlighting that fantastic aspect of Unspeakable Oath, where you don't really know whether you've been an inmate yourself. Are you being invited in as a guest or an inmate? It's so hard to tell. It could.
And we touched on the bit about the asylum being familiar, didn't
yes.
we? When we were talking about it ourselves. So, yeah, it's very good stuff. Yes.
And I guess thinking about it, if you were just a guest, why would we start fires and things? That feels more like something an inmate would do. Start the fire.
Yeah.
All those sorts of things feels very much like an inmate rather than a...
causing the disruption.
That's
yes.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's just a small point, actually. Great Ass Goblin also just made a point about the Forgotten Age, because I think we said you could also die in a scenario in the Forgotten Age, but he pointed out that you can die in scenario 2 of the Forgotten Age. So,
Of course you can.
Yeah. Actually, Forgotten Age is even more extreme than Carcosa from that perspective.
It's I think it's one of those campaigns, isn't it, that people didn't like at first.
Yep.
Particularly on that first playthrough, because it is incredibly brutal. But it's risen in people's opinions over the years.
Yes.
Particularly now the card pool has expanded to be able to deal with a lot of the challenges that it throws at you.
Yes.
But we'll be dealing with that in a few short months,
That's right,
won't we?
exactly. We'll have a good chat about difficulty and achievement, I think, because I think the Forgotten Age kind of set a new standard from that. So, yeah, fantastic. Thank you to everybody for writing in and things. That was really fantastic. We really appreciate it. And please keep it coming, because we really enjoy getting the feedback and the thoughts. That's brilliant.
Yes, so where are we? We are off to Paris, I believe.
Yes.
This week.
Yes. Cue the accordions. Cue the classic French music.
There's people with stripy jumpers with
that's
onions
right.
on their neck on bicycles. Yes.
Yes, so...
Yes. Going honky, honky,
That's
honk.
right,
Yeah. Any other cliches we can
That's
throw
right.
in?
Our apologies to all our francophone people who may be listening. We're going to butcher the language and make horrible stereotypical observations about French people throughout.
Yes. Yes. So, so following we had an interlude, didn't we, after the last scenario, which basically told us that we needed to go and find Nigel, I think, wasn't it?
That's right.
Where because it was the play came from Paris, didn't it?
Yes.
That came touring.
Correct.
The US. So our decision is we now suddenly need to go to Paris. A little bit of a logical leap there, yes.
Well, there's the intro that if everybody died, which is the classic, you're picking up their trail where it left off almost. It's almost the beginning again in a sense. So there's an intro like that, but it makes clear the point that Engram's in Paris and that's where we need to go. And then there's the intro, which is more, well, you've survived and you need to go and find. And it's weird. It's a little bit like, remember in the Dunwich Legacy, we knew we had to go to Dunwich, but we ended up doing other stuff and then went to Dunwich. This is a little bit the same. Nigel Engram's been this character sort of in the background for a while. But it's taken till this scenario for us to go, I think we better go to Paris and see Nigel Ingram,
Let's go see if we can find this Nigel fella.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how
he can tell us what's really going on.
Exactly. And, how difficult is it going to be to find a single person in a metropolis like Paris? It can't be hard. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
But before we do that, whichever intro we have a lot of dreams. We have a bit of a dream sequence.
And what a sequence it is.
Yeah.
What a convoluted sequence it is.
It's like a kind of a mini choose your own adventure game, sort of compressed like a little mini one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We'll see if we can work out a way of putting it in the show notes, but I have actually tried drawing it out to work out which bits follow on for which other bits, and some bits loop back onto other previous branches and such like. But so shall we start wading our way through the dream sequence?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think this is the first time it's done this as well. The dream sequences aren't presented in numerical order.
No.
Which it gives you our first gotcha that we touched on earlier. So it goes, continue to dream 1, don't get lost. So you turn the page and you start reading dream 5. You peer into the mirror and your reflection gives you a curious glance. Wait a second, this isn't dream 1, you say. Continue to dream 1.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that dream 5 is not, you're never told to read dream 5.
No.
I think it's just there just to remind you that you're not reading these pages in sequential order.
Yeah, very clever.
Go to dream 1. Stop reading this, you fool.
Yes.
So, so it starts off with dream 1. Mm-hmm. You fall through the empty abyss of Harley, however you prefer to pronounce that. Creature of the unknown and impossible, lurk beyond the darkness of your sight. Hasta looms above you. Oh, I said it, didn't I? Magnificent and yet bound in the prison of madness, manipulating your tortuous descent with a soul outstretched arm. And so we each gain the lost soul weakness, and we all get that shuffled into our deck, and we continue to dream 2.
So, shall I read dream 2? So,
yeah, sure.
Everybody goes to dream 2. I've got to find it here. There it is. Constance takes your hand and pulls you onto the polished dance floor. Come now, don't be shy. Tonight is a night for dancing, for celebration. I love the way it harkens back to previous scenarios like that. It's really great. Yeah. So if the king claimed its victims, is that if you've burnt everyone to death or something?
No, that's if we died on the previous scenario, I think. King claimed its victims.
That's sorry. Yes, then you go to dream 8. If the above is not true, and if you intruded on a secret meeting, and that is from the last king, that's dream 3.
was going to say, that was one of the interlude resolutions where you had to make a decision as to whether you went back in, whether you ran away, or whether you killed everybody. So these two are mutually exclusive. So
that's right.
You can't have both intruded on the secret meeting and slayed the monsters at the dinner party.
Yep.
It will be one or the other, or neither.
One or the other. Or neither, which is the bottom one, which is Dream 6. So it's one of those three. Yep.
So, as part of my mapping all of this out, Dream 8 goes off onto a whole series of dreams. Dream 3 does as well, but then that loops back into what happens in the Dream 8 sequence. And both the Dream 4 and 6 loop back to what happened in the Dream 3 sequence. So depending on which of those decisions, you could actually end up with the negative outcomes of multiple of those branches, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
So I guess part of it is maybe working out what is the ideal set of circumstances to avoid all of the negative outcomes.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to find my notes again. The only outcome that gives you absolutely no negatives is let me just trace my notes back. It's to have not slayed the monsters. The police aren't suspicious of you. And you have more than 4 tally marks. That way, you get your way right the way through to Dream 13 and the Awakening without having to change anything in your campaign log, without having to take any traumas, without having to take any extra weaknesses, and not changing your doubt and conviction levels.
So to get 4 tally marks, you have to have defeated the man in the pallid mask 4 times. Is that right?
Yes, I think that's right.
Now, you start. Do you start with 1 or 2? Yeah. So, no, you get 2 tally marks at the beginning. Just here, chasing the stranger, place 2 tally marks for the right. So you get 2, I think. Yes. So you start with 2.
Yeah. So you basically got to get in 2 more times in addition to that first scenario. So 2 times in 3 scenarios.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any other situations where you get tally marks just, maybe you do, but I can't think of any. So a lot of the time, that's quite hard to do. Because he has to turn up. And then if he does turn up, then you've got to defeat him. So that's quite hard to get 4. That would be quite difficult. Yeah.
And then conversely, the worst possible scenario, I guess, is that you did slay the monsters, so you killed everybody at the party in the interlude. That will give you a mental trauma here. The police are suspicious of you because you tried to warn them in the first scenario. That will give you the weakness of paranoia. Whatever happens, you end up with this scenario where if you've got less than 3 or fewer tally marks, you meet the stranger. He shows you this stained glass, asks you if it's beautiful, and you've got a choice then of saying, how could this be beautiful? Or, what am I looking at? And either of those will give you either a doubt or a conviction, depending on which way you answer it. So that's sort of the sequence of changes that you can come through there. You then work your way through to Dream 13, you awaken, and then the final question is, did we interview Jordan Perry or not? If we did, then we start this scenario with 3 extra resources. As I was saying, I feel like Charlie Day in the Always Sunny meme there. I've got all these arrows pointing everywhere.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's really great how you've mapped it out like that, and we'll put that in the notes because it's really worth having a look. If you've obviously played the scenario a few times as well, but it's really nice how it kind of implicitly tells you your dreams are all over the place because they're not in numerical order. So you're having these sort of, they're sort of messing with your mind. It's lovely how it goes back to the party, it goes back to the Arkham Police Department. So it has these flashbacks, but there's also some foreshadowing as well. Because I think one of them is a bit of a foreshadowing of what's to come as well. I think one of them is Dream 10 is a bit of foreshadowing, because Dream 10 is all about broken staircases and lightning flashing. And now that's not in this coming scenario, but this is something we're going to experience in a couple of scenarios' time. So it's really nice the way it messes with stuff happening maybe now, stuff that's happened in the past, and stuff that will happen in the future. So it's really fantastic.
Yeah,
really
Dream
great.
10 you only see if you've got 4 or more tally marks on the stranger. So that's the only time you get that glimpse of the future then.
This campaign does a good job of rewarding you with extra information as a benefit, because things are so difficult to know what's really going on. One of the key benefits you can get in this scenario, which is so different to all the others where it's very objective information that you get, is it actually rewards you with information that you wouldn't otherwise know. So it's really nice the way that it does that. And, three extra resources and starting at Montparnasse is also a really nice benefit to this scenario. So interviewing everybody at the party has some real benefits to it. If you can interview them all and then kill them all, you're in a good place, kind of. So
yeah, because I think an interview that affected one of the previous scenarios as well, didn't it? I think whether you'd interviewed somebody else. I might be remembering that wrong.
Oh, no, yeah, all of them, I think. I mean, they all give you either extra information, you get an extra resource or an extra clue. Remember? Yeah, with...
it's in the setup
was it
now, the last
Echoes
one.
of the Past? Yeah. I think it was Echoes of the Past where you get a clue on the starting spot as well, from memory.
That sounds right, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a few things like that you get for the interviewing. So it's just a really great way to sort of set things up. And because it's relatively complicated, as you've set out, it's not likely to be the same twice. So you're going to get sort of things a little bit different each time you do it. So
it's like they've taken, I can't remember which scenario it was, but there was one scenario in Dunwich, wasn't it? I think it was near the end, where every single previous scenario affected the setup in some way or another, whether it was the makeup of the chaos bag or what happened on the actual layout or the specific setup instructions. So it's sort of that to the nth degree here, isn't it? And playing in, like we say, to the doubt and conviction. We don't know what's going on. We're having these crazy dreams that are firing off in all different directions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really well done. And we've not even started yet.
We've not even started yet. Yes, I guess we set this thing up with sort of Paris, and I checked the metro. This is geographically, as you would expect, sort of spatially it doesn't make sense, but geographically it's about right.
Yeah, I had a look at that as well. Yeah, I think if you tilt the map maybe 30 degrees, it all maps out almost exactly.
Yeah, it does. So it's really nice the way, it's fantastic to be going to a different city, to be going to Paris at this time. And I think they've done a really good job of making Paris seem like quite a complex place to get around. But also everything's anchored to the railway line and then sort of locations off the railway line. So I think it's a really nice way that that the developers set it up that way. It's really great.
So shall we walk through the setup then? It's in terms of setup, it's pretty straightforward, but the consequences of the setup play out utterly differently, don't they? This is almost two completely different scenarios depending on...
Yes.
Well, in terms of how it plays, not how you set it up, sort of thing. Yes. So
absolutely, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of the standard encounter decks. We're actually pulling in some treachery cards from Midnight Masks. But then the change is depending on whether our doubt is higher or lower than our conviction. So if we've got more or equal doubt than conviction, then we take out certain cards, but we use the version 1 of Act 1. But if we have more conviction than doubt, then we take some different cards out and we use version 2. And we'll go into detail as we look at the individual cards as to what the consequences of that are. But it sounds very straightforward. Oh, it'll just be a minor tweak, won't it? Just having a slightly different act card. But as we'll come to see, no, definitely not.
It makes for a very different game. Yes.
Yeah. So then, in terms of the actual setup, there are three locations have got two different versions of them, so it's random as to whether you put them in or not. So that's the Montmartre, the Opera Garnier, and the Le Marais. But everything else is a single version. And that's pretty much it. We set aside the organist because he'll turn up later. And then we get going, starting off in... I've forgotten.
Gare d'Orsay. Gare d'Orsay is where we start, unless we've got Jordan's information where we start at Montparnasse instead.
Yep. I mean, in terms of how the game plays, it doesn't really make much difference, does it? I'm not sure why you start off in a different location with his information. I suppose.
No, I think it's just that the L'Agneau Perdu is in Montparnasse. That's all. It's a cafe in Montparnasse. So I think you're right. It doesn't actually matter. And in fact, starting at Gare d'Orsay is a benefit because you can use a resource to get around on the train line, right?
Yeah. Because it's not as though we need to be at a specific location to have found Nigel Engram's house. As we'll see later, that just happens at the end.
Exactly.
So the location-wise doesn't make a difference, like you say. It's just whether I suppose it's just narrative, really. Yeah, we're meeting. We're going to that cafe. We're getting that information. We maybe want to get closer to finding the house.
Exactly.
So that is set up. Really, there's not much else.
No, the most complicated part of the setup is setting out the cards. You really do need the suggested location placement.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's a little bit like Midnight Masks. It might drive you a bit batty otherwise. So it's very helpful to have that because without that, it's difficult.
Yeah. And you've got that loop, haven't you? That sort of hexagon shape of rail locations that you can go to from Gare d'Orsay by spending a resource. So that's one way of getting around the map a little bit quicker as well. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, in a way, it's this sort of circle. It's a centre circle with sort of locations off it. I mean, they could have, a bit like what they've done in the Edge of the Earth, where it's sort of circular connections.
Yeah,
could have sort of set it out a little bit like that. But it doesn't matter. But
at least by doing it this way, they've kept it geographically accurate.
Accurate. Yes, exactly. So like you say, that's the setup. It's fairly straightforward. Now, do you think we should talk about the locations first, or should we talk about this sort of the act and the agenda? Like you say, they're sort of essentially it's two parallel types of games. The games play very differently, and they really sort of are quite intimately interconnected.
The locations stay the same, whatever option we've chosen. None of them are specific to one version or the other. So yeah, I think you're right. It probably makes sense. Let's talk through the locations, and then we'll talk through the gameplay.
Shall I start with Gare d'Orsay on the train line? Yeah. So it's got a little picture of the very huge, actually, train station with the clock and everything. I don't know whether that's actually a rendition of how it looked at that time. But built in 1900, this train station was the first urban station in the world to use only electric trains, which is interesting point.
I'm not used to flavour text being factual and informational rather than something spooky and menacing.
Yes, and it's one of the things I noticed is there's a bit of this thing that we're in a foreign city and it's a bit touristy, some of the flavour text. It's like there's an implicit assumption that the people playing this, are kind of interested in the idea of Paris and as an exotic location outside of the United States, if you like. And that kind of plays a bit into the cards, which is fine. It's just interesting that that's not normally how, to your point, flavour text isn't normally that factual. But in this case, there's a lot of factual information for people who may not be so, I don't know. I've been to Paris, obviously, but I don't know it to that detail. So I found it quite interesting. I'm like, oh, okay, that's quite nice. So yeah, Gare d'Orsay, which doesn't exist anymore, actually. Gare d'Orsay, it's been replaced with something else. But and then if you turn it over, it's a 4-shroud, 1 clue per investigator location. And you can take an action to spend a resource and move to any rail location. So you can literally zip across the board to another rail location. And it says here, you'd expect the station to be bustling, but it is eerily abandoned, save for a few passengers who wander the station in slow, meandering steps. So there's already things, even though it's Paris, they're already saying things are not as you would expect them to be.
Or are they?
Strange. Or are they? Exactly.
I'm going to do that on every card now, just to be really annoying.
Or will you?
Yeah. Now, keep you on your toes now. Right, so what's next? Sorry, I've got my cards out in a list, so I'm not sure what is connected to what. Let's go to Opera Garnier. So this is one where we got a choice of 2. So again, this is another rail location. The Palais Garnier is an ornate architectural masterpiece and one of the most famous opera houses in the world. Strangely, you find the main doors thrown wide open and a dark mist creeps out from the doorway. So we've got a nice little combination there of the factual and the creepy.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
getting a bit back to the flavour text we expect there. And you can sort of see a sort of a mist coming down the stairs on the drawing, on the painting there. Yes, looking suitably spooky. Is that
something dead? Is there something dead on the stairs? It's hard to tell, but something kind of...
It does look a little bit like there's something there, isn't there?
And it's so over the top gothic, isn't it? Look at the staircase. It's just like so over the top. It's clearly it's not a realistic rendering. Clearly there's something going on in our minds or something, because it's all just a bit left field, isn't it? Yeah, it's great.
So we've got two different versions. Both of them are a very high shroud, but they both have a mechanism to help you investigate. So one of them is 5 shroud with 1 clue per investigator. While you are investigating Opera Garnier, double the number of skill icons on cards committed to this skill test. And then to sort of lead into what you were just saying, a trail of blood leads up the grand staircase. Deep cold mist envelops the room. You get the unmistakable feeling that there is something inhuman in the opera house. So that might, that is probably a body there at the top of the steps with blood trickling down.
Yeah. Or it could just be pest control. Who knows? Maybe they've had a cockroach infestation and they're just.
So that's clear. 5 shroud, but you can double the skill card, the icons on the skill cards you commit. Sorry, the skill icons on the cards, not specifically skill cards. And then the other version of it is a 6 shroud, 1 clue per investigator. Investigator, that's the word, yeah. And then while you're investigating, you can double the base value of your skill. So, like I say, they're both high shroud, but they've both got a way of boosting either your base stat or what you commit to it to try and at least get that clue.
You know, given the location, because often there's a sort of a connection between a location and how the clue and shrouds play out. Do you think there's anything in that? I'm just trying to work out why, like you're doubling it, but also the shroud is high. I can't really think how that feeds into this particular location, but
maybe opera is intellectually challenging.
Yes.
But while you're there and you're being swept up in it with everybody enjoying it, it helps you. I don't know, I'm waffling. I'm clutching at some very thin straws there.
But it's a great location. Fantastic. Shall I do the next one? Shall I do the location off Opera Garnier, which is the Grand
that makes
Guignol?
sense. Yeah, we'll work our way around that circle and take the offshoots as we come across them.
Yes. So Grand Guignol is the Theatre of the Great Puppet. I actually Googled Grand Guignol, and it is the splatter film of the of the 19th century. It basically they put on these very short theatrical plays that were sort of horrendously gory and lots of murders and horrible scientific experiments and things, all sort of in the theatre stage. But apparently it finished 1962. It closed. It was around from like 1890 to 1962. Very, very popular. And here it goes. Yeah, the Théâtre de Grand Guignol specialises in horror shows of a graphic and sometimes amoral nature. It is among the smallest venues in Paris and one of the most popular. And it's still there. It's now just a museum of sound or something, I think it is now. So it's a 3-shroud, 1 clue per investigator location. Forced, after you reveal Grand Guignon, you must either take 2 horror or shuffle all non-weakness cards from your hand into your deck and then draw an equal number of cards. And I can sort of see the effect there of seeing these horrible plays. But actually, that could be a good thing if you wanted to shuffle your hand and sort of get something different if you weren't happy with the cards that you have. It's sort of an opportunity to do that. So it's either horrific or it's actually kind of freeing your mind up to rethink things. So it's actually could be a benefit as well. But
in theory, you could be getting your weaknesses then, if you haven't got them already.
Exactly. Yes. It's a bit of a risk, exactly. And the flavour text says, it seems the theatre is performing a show about insanity. You wonder if they have ever performed The King in Yellow. Yeah, interesting.
But it's interesting as well that, you could potentially have to take 2 horror, I'm guessing, because that's your reaction to what you see that they're putting on here. With these graphic and amoral plays.
Yeah, so there's a play on called Le Baiser du Sang, which sounds like the Butcher of Blood or something. I think that's what that means.
Yeah, and there's blood all over it. It looks like it's not just on the print; it's smeared onto the wall.
Oh, The Kiss of Blood.
The Kiss of
Blood. That's the name of it. The Kiss of Blood. Lovely.
Excellent. Shall I take Montmartre next? Let me find it on
lovely
my notes. This is another one of the rail locations. So on the unrevealed side, you've heard this district to be vibrant and friendly, but the streets feel unusually lonely to you, and the picture's got an octopus in it. No wonder it's lonely.
yeah, that's right.
So again, yes, there's 2 different versions. One of which is quite an interesting one: 3 shroud, 1 clue per investigator. The flavour text: cold rain pelts the street. Every alleyway you pass is another hiding place for something sinister, like an octopus. But as an action on this one, reveal the top card of each investigator's deck. You may play an asset revealed by this effect, paying its cost, under your control, and then shuffle each investigator's deck. So I was trying to work out how that plays into the flavour text. It's supposed to be a vibrant and friendly location, but it lets you nick your fellow investigators' assets. That's not particularly friendly, is it? Or maybe it is being friendly. They're helping you out by, have this knife, have this gun.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. So it's sharing. And it's group limit once per round, it's not even once per game, so you can constantly keep doing it if you want.
You can be really annoying, can't you? Oh, you wanted to play that, did you? No, I'm having it. It's like kleptomania, isn't it? But yeah, there's not very many options to use other players' cards, so that's quite interesting having that in there.
It is, exactly. Yeah.
And then the other version, it's more straightforward. 2 shroud, 1 clue per investigator. As an action, you can spend a resource to add a supply or ammo token to a card you control, and again, it's once per round. So both of those versions, it's you getting something for an action.
Yeah, and I can see it for a Guardian. If you had a Guardian, or they could be of benefit. It's going to be particularly for Guardians with lots of items, or other people who have lots of items in their deck, survivors perhaps. There could be some benefits to those. So, yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so that's Montmartre.
Shall I do the next rail location?
Okay.
Which is Le Marais. Le Marais, which is also a double one. So this is showing a fountain. This historic district has recently become less aristocratic, but the old architectural masterwork remains, which looks fairly standard except for the... it looks like a Biaki flying across the moon in the background, which is something that features in this scenario, obviously. And if we flip them over, again, one's higher shroud than the other. They're both 1 clue per investigator, but the higher shroud one, which is a shroud of 3, has a reaction trigger when your turn begins. If you're in the Marais, draw 1 card. So that's nice. You can actually draw a card, and it says, throughout this region, you cannot shake the feeling that you are being watched. Something along the rooftops ducks just out of sight each time you peer upward. I guess that's the Biaki. The lower shroud version, which is a 1 shroud, after you enter Le Marais for the remainder of the round, you cannot leave Le Marais. So 1 gives you a benefit of drawing a card each time you're there, which is great. It's just a higher shroud. The other one, if you enter it, you can't leave it at the same time, which in the early stages is not too bad, but that could be a bit of a problem later if you're being chased by various monsters and people. So, yep.
Shall I take the first of the 2 locations that's off that location? So that's Canal Saint-Martin. And this is one of the single place locations. So, yeah, on the unrevealed side, so again, we've got tentacles in the water. There's definitely a common theme here of creepy tentacles, whether it be an octopus or something else. This underground canal connects the River Seine to the Canal de l'Ourcq. An old cracked staircase leads down to the canal's entrance. The revealed side, it's 4 shroud, 1 clue per investigator, and there's no flavour text. It's got a reaction. After you evade an enemy at Canal Saint-Martin, move that enemy to a connecting location. Limit once per round. Okay.
And is it the first one with a victory point? I think it is.
Might be, actually, yeah.
It's not exactly lots of victory point locations in this one, are there?
No. So, narratively, I suppose if you evade something there, it could escape through the canals to another location. When you look on the map of Paris, the canal is sort of like a zigzag that runs up, sort of like the eastern side of the city centre. So, yeah, it's an opportunity for it to escape elsewhere to one of the other surrounding locations. Okay, so next would be the Père Lachaise Cemetery. That be for you?
Yep. So Père Lachaise Cemetery, which is I think that's the one that there's lots of famous people there, aren't there? There's Oscar Wilde there, and Jim Morrison from The Doors. It's that cemetery, isn't it? Yeah, there's lots of famous people. Oscar Wilde is there, Sarah Bernhardt is there, Marcel Marceau is there, Yves Montand is there, Jim Morrison's there, Marcel Proust is there. There's a lot of sort of famous people there, but obviously Jim Morrison wouldn't have been there in the 1920s. But the largest cemetery in Paris and its first garden cemetery, Père Lachaise, is as beautiful as it is haunting, and haunting being that one of the graves has been smashed open and it looks like something has crawled out.
Yes. Probably smashed open from the inside.
Yeah, exactly. It's only a 1 shroud and 2 clues per investigator, so it's very rich in information. So this is kind of saying that, this would be a place to check things out to try and find where Nigel is, because it's like that. After you successfully investigate Père Lachaise Cemetery, you cannot leave until the end of the round, so that's the only sort of downside. I mean, it's got a victory point, so it's an easy victory point. And it says, paths of stone wind through rows of graves and countless mausoleums. The dense, twisting cemetery has you trapped in a state of melancholy, surrounded by death on all sides. So I guess that's why you can't leave, because you're sort of trapped there. Yes.
Nicely put. Trapped by the melancholy.
Yes. So very French, isn't it? I'm trapped by the melancholy of life. What am I to do?
Right, so we've done Le Marais, haven't we?
Yes.
So it's
yes.
Notre Dame next. So
isn't it Notre Dame?
Notre Dame, no, the Notre Dame. Yeah, we're here at Notre Dame. Yeah, the most famous cathedral in all of Paris and one of the finest examples of Gothic architecture in the world. Notre Dame de Paris, Our Lady of Paris, is an icon of the city. Light shines out from its stained glass windows, and you can hear a pipe organ inside, blaring a bizarre, chaotic melody. And then on the revealed side, 3 shroud, 1 clue per investigator, no flavour text. Each enemy at Notre Dame gets -1 fight, but +1 evade. And then as an action, you can test willpower of 6. And if you succeed, you can either add a doom to the current engender or remove one. But you can only do that once per game as a group. And we'll come on to why that may or may not be important when we're talking about the acts.
Yes. And this kind of signposts that this isn't just objective reality here, because, would that really be happening at Notre Dame? It's very strange, extremely weird. So, yes, exactly. So the next one is the Gardens of Luxembourg, which is very Gothic and creepy as well. The Gardens of Luxembourg Palace contain hundreds of scattered statues. Yeah. It's bringing back memory when I was there last. Yes, it's fantastic. Monuments and fountains. It would make for a relaxing walk if you hadn't come here to escape the winged creatures that screech and soar in the dark sky overhead. And there's indeed one sort of perched on something there, it would seem, or just flying over it. It's hard to tell. Yes. So this is a 3 shroud, one clue per investigator location. No flavour text, but while a Biaki enemy is moving, if there is an investigator at the Gardens of Luxembourg, that enemy's location is considered to be connected to the Gardens of Luxembourg. So for whatever reason, they can move directly here, like a swift Biaki or something can come straight here and pick you up.
When you look at the Gardens of Luxembourg on a map of Paris, they are quite large, so it does sort of cover quite a big portion of the city centre sort of thing. So I guess that's related to that. It's quite easy for the flying creatures to get there from whatever location you're at. Yes. They will home in on you.
Yes. Okay,
so next then, our final location is Montparnasse. Another single location. Montparnasse. This area is known for its cafes and bars, and it is often frequented by starving artists. Perhaps some of these creative types will become famous someday. Most, you assume, will fade into obscurity. When you reveal it, 2 shroud, 1 clue per investigator, and as a player window action, you can discard a card from your hand and gain resources equal to the number of willpower icons on the discarded card, limit once per round. Not quite sure how that fits in thematically. You're gaining resources for giving up your willpower. Are you giving in to, I don't know, being entertained by the artists of the streets? But I'm not quite sure why you're getting resources out of that. Normally you would throw them a few coins, wouldn't you?
Exactly.
But I mean, I know resources isn't always money, but perhaps you're giving up your willpower and getting information. Or maybe it's, I don't know.
I mean, maybe it's the classic idea of, which is in The King in Yellow, is the idea that art is a gateway to insight and madness. So one of the themes of The King in Yellow is that artistic endeavour can warp reality and literally change it. So that could be part of it. So yeah, interesting. So there we go. Really fantastic. Such a rich. It's not just your usual. Here's this location. Here's that location. Really rich. I mean, it's it really brings Paris to life in quite a nice way. It feels the atmosphere it evokes just on a few cards laid out is great. It really makes it fantastic.
It's a much larger scale as well, isn't it, than many of the scenarios that we've been through so far. We're not going through individual rooms and stairs in the Historical Society building. We're going to entire regions of the city.
Exactly.
So, it's really well done.
It is, and you're right. I mean, not since Midnight Masks, would be that kind of scale. I don't think. I mean, obviously you've got Beyond Time and Space, which is different, but I'm talking about still anchored sort of. but to that kind of level of complexity, taking a whole city or a whole town, as a sort of a map idea, it's fantastic.
Shall we look back at the act and agendas now then, and see how this plays out?
Yes, because I think, as you said before, it's kind of like there's two very different ways this scenario can be played. So So to get the version 1, this is where you sort of have more doubt, or you sort of it's equal. So it says the Parisian conspiracy. You pass the Church of St. Barnabé as you exit the train station, and cannot help but overhear the organ playing. Is there a sermon this late in the evening? You marvel at the wild and strange chords for a moment before continuing. Paris is a big city, and you have very few leads. I talked about Notre Dame being where the weird chords are, but this one seems to be the Church of St. Barnabé. So yes, we've stepped out onto the train station, or perhaps at Montparnasse, but where are we going to start? How are we going to do anything? So it's kind of like we kind of turned up, but we don't know what. We know we're looking for Nigel Ingram, but we've got no idea how to find him.
And I'm glad they acknowledged that in the text as well. This is a huge city.
Exactly.
We've got no. What on earth are we going to do?
Exactly.
Hang on, organ music.
That's right. Because what I'm glad that they kind of didn't do is they could have get enough clues to find the hidden area where Nigel Ingram's house is, and it was like a location. And I'm kind of glad they didn't do that, because how many years would it take you in Paris to kind of, do that? So anyway, so there's two. It's got 2 clues per investigator. Spend the requisite number of clues to advance. And at the end of the round, if there are 3 or more doom in play, advance. So there's 2 options for advancement. Either you've gotten the clues, particularly if you've hung out at the cemetery and things like that, or there is 3 or more dooms. So that's already makes it a little bit different to normal, because normally you don't flip the act from the doom, but in this case you do, which implies that as things get bad, you sort of flip to the next one, and that says St. Barnabé. Now, depending on whether you spent clues to advance or not, if you spent the clues to advance, you nearly bump into a tall man, his coat and hat as black as his skin is pale. It's like you bumped into Marilyn Manson, really, isn't it? You remember seeing him through the windows of St. Barnaby Church. His organ playing continues to haunt you. Spawn the set-aside organist enemy to the lead investigator's location, but you're getting the draped in mystery location side up, and then advance to Act 2A. Now, the draped in mystery version is different, because the draped in mystery version, he can't be damaged, he's aloof, but if he's unengaged, he moves away from you, not towards you. So he's constantly running away rather than running towards you.
Or if he's engaged with you, he disengages as well, doesn't he? So he's constantly getting away from you.
Correct. If it's doom that caused it to flip, the organ you heard earlier continues to haunt you. So no matter where you are, the torturous chords play over and over in your head. Startled, you ask a passerby about the church. St. Barnabé, she replies in a thick accent. There is no such place. Is that a thick enough accent for you? Each investigator takes 2 horror and Spawn the set-aside organist enemy draped in mystery. So that's that.
But the difference there, he is spawned furthest away from you. Whereas if you spend the clues to advance, he's spawned with you.
He's at your location.
Yeah.
So he's even more difficult to access because he's further away.
I guess he can't get any further away, though.
No, that's right. The chords that echo in... And then Act 2A is Pursuing Shadows. So the chords that echo in your mind, the Infernal Man whose organ playing intrigues and terrifies you. Perhaps there is a connection between the shadowy presence and the King in Yellow. Maybe. You've got to attack him to put a clue on him, right? Which you can group limit one per round, yeah.
Yeah, so he's trying to get away from us. He's disengaging from us. He's moving away. We're trying to chase after him and get clues onto it. Attack him and put clues on him.
Yes.
So that we can advance the act.
Yes. And if there are 3 clues per investigator on the organist, then you advance in that way. If you manage to do that, so the idea is you're attacking him in the sense that the way I read it is you're stalking him, you're observing him, you're trying to follow him. You're trying to pursue him and find out what he's doing because clearly he's strange, right?
Yes, yeah.
So you're trying to understand. So if you do that enough, then you pursue your quarry through a narrow avenue, passing a set of heavy iron gates. You're in a dead end, a court with tall old houses on either side. You close the gates behind you and turn back towards shadowed figure, just as day begins to break. Rays of light peek out above the skyline and you lift your hand to block the gaze of the sun. Block the gaze of the sun? To block your gaze of the sun? Then, as though dispersed by the sunlight, the figure that you had been chasing folds into the shadows and vanishes. You search the court for the mysterious figure, but there is no sign of him anywhere. Just as you are about to leave, you spot a plaque next to a red brown door atop a steep, narrow staircase. It reads N. Ingram. And then you get R1 and R2 for that.
Yeah, we'll come to that later.
So, as you said, essentially he's running away. You're trying to attack him to get clues on him. And if you get enough, you essentially are able to follow him to Nigel's place. Yeah.
So then the version 2 of the act, so this is where you have more conviction than doubt. You are convinced that something weird is going on rather than not being sure what's happening around you. The front of the Act 1A is exactly the same, other than it saying version 2 on it. Again, you're spending the requisite number of clues to advance, or you're advancing if there's 3 doom anywhere in play. This time it's slightly the other way round on the reverse, so if you spend the clues to advance, the organ you heard earlier continues to haunt you. No matter where you are, the torturous chords play over and over in your head. The sensation that you are being watched tugs at your mind. So you spawn the organist at the location furthest from all investigators, but this time it's the other side of the organist. It's the hopeless, I defied him side. And then you move to Act 2A, Stalked by Shadows. Whereas if it's the doom that makes you advance, it's the other. This time, again, you bump into Marilyn Manson. You bump into the tall man, his coat and hat as black as his skin is pale. He gives you a look of hatred, as intense and as deadly as you have ever seen. You recoil at the mere sight of him, and shadows gather around his feet as he marches towards you. Each investigator takes 2 horror. Spawn the set-aside organist at the lead investigator's location. Again, hopeless, I defied him. And move to Act 2A, Stalked by Shadows. So it's a similar progression to the other act, but it's the other way round. In both cases, if the doom advances to cause this to trigger, you take 2 horror, and then he's either spawned further away or close to you. But this is the version of the organist that will hunt and attack you. So it's the opposite way round. The version you read out, the version 1, you're chasing the organist trying to get him. This way round, he's after you. So, the Act 2A, Stalked by Shadows. I know that every time I met him, brought him nearer to the accomplishment of his purpose and my fate, and still I tried to save myself. Robert W. Chambers in The Court of the Dragon, The King in Yellow. So, as a player window action, you can spend 1 clue per investigator as a group to either place a doom on the current agenda or to automatically evade the organist. Group limit once per round, but the objective is survive 3 nights, Do not advance until you are instructed. So we'll come on to the knights because that's on the agenda deck. But if you do survive 3 nights, the actor advances Shepherd's Crook. You lose track of yourself within the city as you flee for your life. Your feet move of their own accord. The beating of sinewy wings and screeching of creatures above you spurs you onwards. Soon you find yourself running down a narrow avenue, passing a set of heavy iron gates. You in a dead end, a court with tall old houses on either side. You turn back towards the entrance and breathe a sigh of relief as you see the sun rising once more over the skyline of Paris. As though dispersed by the sunlight, the figure that has been chasing you folds into the shadows and vanishes. Just as you are about to leave, you spot a plaque next to a red-brown door atop a steep, narrow staircase. It reads N. Engram. And then we check the campaign log for the resolutions. So it's a similar thing. We're either chasing the organist and accidentally finding Nigel Engram's house, or being chased by the organist and accidentally find Nigel Engram's house. I like the way that the location of the house isn't tied to a specific location. So we don't know where in Paris Nigel Engram's house is as the player. We just know we've stumbled across it somehow.
Exactly. And I think that's great because, you know, like I said, they could have done the classic gather enough clues and, you know, you sort of, you know, the hidden location is revealed. And I'm glad they didn't go down that path. The only thing I would say is that the version where you're chasing the organist around, almost like you're following him, feels more satisfying in the sense that that would sort of make sense. You've spotted this very strange figure and you've managed to stay on his tail, if you like, stay close enough to him. Because I don't take the attacking as literal, that you're literally attacking him, but you're managing to stick with him as he gets to Nigel Engram's place. That to me that makes sense. The other way where he's chasing you, it's just, I find that a little bit less satisfying from a story perspective, that leads you to Nigel Engram's house. Do you see what I mean? Like, I get the idea of you following him and he's trying to evade you and get away, and he's clearly got his own agenda, which I think clearly comes to pass. But the idea that the organist would chase after you and that somehow leads to you to find Nigel Engram's house feels less satisfying.
Yeah, why would he be chasing you towards the house? And why would he be chasing you towards the house in a way that you happen to be there on the third sunrise? But again, I suppose it's playing into the doubt and conviction, although that sequence of events is when you have more conviction than doubt. You're convinced about that these horrors are real and such like, but
exactly. And in a way, I feel I personally, I didn't enjoy playing it where the organist was attacking us. I found that really hard. The other one.
Well, the mistake we made last week was we got the organist the wrong way round. So we were having him run away. No, he was chasing us while we were trying to fight him, which we did it completely wrong, didn't we?
Yes.
That's a very unsatisfying way of playing the game.
Yeah, it is. But I think they could have. I don't know why they needed the two, because I think just having us, you know, and I think they could have played with doubt and conviction in other ways, but just having, you know, spot this strange man and you have to try and follow him for 3 nights or whatever, or stay on his tail, would have been fine. I just find the idea of having him chasing you, like you said, it's sort of, he chases you so you can find Nigel Engram's house, just feels a bit sort of roundabout, you know what I mean? But anyway,
But yeah, I guess it's similar to the emails that we received. It's playing into that, what is really going on. We're not sure what we've really witnessed. Sure. We thought we were being chased by somebody, maybe we weren't. Oh, here we are. There's Nigel's house.
Yes.
Maybe we knew all along. We haven't actually talked about that different version of the organist, have we? So just bear with me. Yeah, so he cannot be damaged, forced after the organist moves from the hunter keyword. If it is unengaged, resolved its hunter keyword a second time. Sorry, I'll do a bit of Monty Python there. The organist cannot attack this phase. So if he is 2 locations away from you, he will still get to you, but at least you won't get an attack from that second hunt. It's very difficult to get away from him, as we found out.
Because everything's so interconnected.
There are very few locations that are more than 2 locations away, because it's a circle with the little branches going off it. It's difficult to keep away from him, and he will attack you, and his attack is 3 horror. So he is very, very serious. Serious, is that the right word? He's horrific. He tested your very sanity.
He did. I mean, 3 is a lot. I mean, that is a lot, and it feels quite unbalanced compared to the other one. It really is tough. And essentially, you've got to survive 3 nights. You've got to kind of survive for quite a long time with him chasing you, and as we found, Biakis and all kinds of things chasing as well. So it was really hard.
I guess we'll be having to use the ability to throw a clue at him to automatically evade him, so that at least stops him hunting after you and gives you a chance to get away. So I think that's the play there, isn't it? That we are.
It is.
We're using what we found, perhaps using the results of our investigation to get away from him. I suppose that's the narrative, of using clues to evade him.
Yes, but you can see again, it's kind of hard to kind of square the circle about what's actually going on compared to the other one, which is you're keeping up with him. Yeah. You're managing to keep him in sight. It's kind of hard to kind of conceptualize. There just seems to be a disconnect between the mechanics and story with that version of it, I think.
Do you think there is a canonical version as to which one should be being played out? Do you think we should be having more conviction than doubt, or should we be having more doubt than conviction? But I guess it's open enough that it's both are real. It's a little bit Schrodinger's scenario.
Yeah, it is. I think both are real. I think I think the game generally does a good job of sort of, whichever one you do, you end up with sort of different interpretations about what's going on. And I think back to what people who wrote in were saying, that plays into the whole idea about unreliable narration and what's really going on. Yeah. And so I think that's really fantastic. I think, though, I love this scenario, don't get me wrong, but I think if you were going to game it and you knew it, you would want more doubt or equal doubt to conviction coming into this, because I don't know. I think the organist chasing you is quite difficult for 3 nights. You've got to survive, which is 16 turns or so. So it's quite a long time. And so it is much more difficult. Yeah.
We'll be looking at resolutions in a minute, but there is one of the resolutions that is clearly the right one, or the good one, shall I say?
Yeah.
And I think looking back through it, the way to get that good in resolution is you need to have more doubt than conviction, because you need to have intruded on a secret meeting, which will give you doubt.
Yep.
So anyway, we'll come on to that in a moment. I'll get ahead of myself there. So shall I have a look at the agendas?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the bit we haven't covered yet, the 3 nights. So do you want to take the first one? The first night?
Sure, Agenda 1A. So first night, you step off the train at Gare d'Orsay, assuming that's where you start. I guess it's assuming even if you end up at Montparnasse, you would go to Gare d'Orsay first. As you step off the train at Gare d'Orsay, the sun sinks below the Paris skyline. You cannot waste any time. If Nigel Engram is somewhere in Paris, you have to find him and wring the answers from him one way or the other. And clearly there's something going on, because there's like a red moon or a red sun in the sky. Things are just not normal. They're not what they see. Now, while you have more conviction than doubt, this agenda gains when checking the doom threshold. Doom on cards other than this agenda subtract the total doom in play instead of adding to it. So this immediately tells you, particularly, if you're in the conviction more than doubt, which means if that's the case, then you're getting the organist hopeless, I defied him, so the organist is coming for you. You don't want, that's not good, because that means it's stopping the agenda from advancing, and you've got to survive 3 nights. So
yes. It slows the advancing down, doesn't it? So that it makes it more difficult to survive those 3 nights. But obviously that only happens if you have more conviction than doubt, which is when the organist is chasing you and you have to survive the 3 nights. If you're not doing the survive 3 nights version, that has no bearing on the game. It doesn't affect it whatsoever.
No. So it's almost like normal. The Doom. The Doom sort of, and in fact, you want to get it done before the Doom finishes. So, and then the next day is daybreak. So it's literally like a timeline here. The day comes, birds start to chirp eagerly, an orange tint. I wonder with the birds chirping in Paris, do they sort of go chirp, chirp, oh, chirp, chirp,
le chirp, le chirp,
le chirp, le tweet, tweet. And
sorry, French followers.
Have you ever seen that Simpsons episode where Lisa's in French class and something happens? She's embarrassed by something, and the whole class goes hee 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 hee, and the teacher goes no en français, and they go ho 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 ho.
Brilliant.
Yeah. An orange tint slowly spreads across the sky as the creatures of the night shrink back into the darkness. You spend most of the day resting, and the daylight passes quickly with very little to show for it. Before you're able to fully recover from the previous night's event, it is evening once more. It's almost like a dream sequence, this whole thing, isn't it? It really is. Each investigator disengages from each enemy engaged with him or her and may move to a connecting location. Move the organist 1 location away from the nearest investigator. So that could be a relief if you're being chased. That's bad if you're trying to chase the organist, obviously. So that's the first night.
So Agenda 2A, conveniently called the second night. The city stirs as cold shadows embrace the streets. There is danger all around you, danger that you cannot escape, danger that will follow you to the ends of the earth. When will this waking nightmare end? While you have more, again, it's the same. If you've got more conviction than doubt, then you get some negative doom based on the doom on locations. So when we survive that, it's a 5 doom threshold. So potentially that's another 5 rounds, maybe sooner, maybe longer, depending on which version you're playing.
Yeah.
To your relief, so a red sun rises is on the 2B. To your relief, the sun once again begins to rise, peaking just over the eastern horizon and casting long shadows across the city streets. You are completely exhausted from the night's events. It feels as though you haven't slept in weeks. Perhaps you haven't. Each investigator disengages from each enemy engaged with him or her, may move to a connecting location. So it's the same again. Move the organist 1 location away from the nearest investigator to a location with no investigators, if possible. Then we check the campaign log. If Jordan Perry is not listed under VIPs slain, then we search the collection for his enemy version and spawn him in Montparnasse. So as another reason to have killed everybody in the party.
Yeah, because he's like could tank a lot of damage or something. I think from memory, he's tough. And so we get on to the third night. So it's third night, the evening of your third night in Paris. A desperate resolve stirs within you. This cat and mouse game cannot go on any longer. One way or the other, this night will end it. And then it's the same thing again. 5 doom threshold. And then if you manage to get that far, you get to dawn at last. The sun rises and dispels the darkness, and warm fog envelops the city, blotting out the sky. And then if you have more or equal doubt than conviction, you do R3. And if you have more conviction than doubt, you advance to Act 2B. So you go to 2B, essentially, which is 2B is the...
That's where you trigger the resolutions.
Resolutions 1 and 2, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there you go.
Yeah. So essentially, we've got 4 outcomes, haven't we, from this scenario? We'll either be defeated. Then resolution 3, like you've just said, is if we get to the end of the third night and doubt is greater than conviction. So that is basically you get to the end of the third night, but you're not playing the Survive 3 Nights version. So that is basically, you're doomed out.
Yeah, you've not managed to follow the organist sufficiently in time to find out where he's going, basically. Yeah.
So that is, as the sun rises once more over the skyline of Paris, you lose sight of the mysterious figure. Frustrated at your failure, you return to your hotel to sleep and recover from the horrors of the past few nights. Your fitful dreams return, dreams of Carcosa, of the king in tatters, and of the shadowy figure whom you have pursued through the streets of Paris. When you awaken, you are no longer in your hotel room. Record in your campaign log that you were unable to find Nigel. And then we swap out the symbol tokens from the Chaos Bag for 2 Elder Things and gain our victory points. So that's pretty much it. So that's sort of the worst positives resolution, isn't it?
Yeah, because you haven't found him. You're sort of left not knowing what to do next, essentially.
Yeah, so like you say, that basically is you've been chasing the organist, but you weren't able to catch him. If you get to the end of the 3 days and you are doing these Survive 3 Nights, then that just takes you to Act 2B, which then triggers the successful resolutions again.
Yes.
And then the decision there is, did you intrude on a secret meeting or not? If you didn't, you get resolution 1. If you did, you get resolution 2.
And the secret meeting being in the Last King, right? That's where you go back into the house.
That's right. Yes. That has so many repercussions. So I'll take the resolution 1, which is that you didn't intrude on a secret meeting. Yeah. So again, we've got to the end. We found that plaque on the door that says N. Engram. You can only assume this house belongs to Nigel Engram, the director of the King in Yellow. At last, you have finally found your quarry, and yet it is little relief to your straining sanity. You feel like a dog being led by a leash, your fate decided by a cruel master who has long kept you in the dark. You push these gloomy thoughts to the back of your mind and knock on Mr. Engram's door. There is no response, but a flock of magpies that scatter from the rooftop at the sudden noise. You try the doorknob, hoping that you won't have to resort to more forceful measures. To your surprise, you find the door unlocked. Inside, Nigel's home is a mess of notes, old books, and strange diagrams. Covering the coffee table in his living room is an old, faded map bearing many fold creases and tattered edges. It looks to be an incomplete map of the catacombs beneath Paris, or at least a section of it. The food in his pantry is old and rotten. There is no sign of anyone having lived here for years, and yet the ink upon the living room walls is wet and fresh. Over and over across nearly every inch of wallpaper it reads, "He is already here." Record in the campaign log that you found Nigel's home. We remove the symbols from the Chaos Bag and replace them with 2 cultists. And again, we earn our victory points, and we mark down if we've killed Jordan if he was about. So we found his house, but no sign of him, but somebody has recently been writing on the walls, "He is already here."
Yes. If we did intrude on the meeting, then we get resolution 2, which is you can only assume that this house belongs to Nigel Engram, the director of the King in Yellow. At last you have finally, this is the same as the other one actually, found your quarry. And yet it is of little relief to your straining sanity. You feel like a dog being led by a leash, your fate decided by a cruel master who has long kept you in the dark. You push these gloomy thoughts to the back of your mind and knock on Mr. Engram's door. A flock of magpies scatters from the rooftop and at the sudden noise, and then to your surprise, the door opens.
Dun dun dun!
Dun! It's Marilyn Manson. I know. Across the threshold of the doorway stands a tall man with a thick brown moustache. A familiar silver-handled cane leans against the wall next to the coat hanger. And if you go back to The Last King, that's who you've seen. That's who you see talking to the man in the pallid mask in the room with a silver cane. So he was there. Engram was actually
in the secret
there.
Meeting.
Yes. Or was he? So it's you, he says. Come on, I have expected you for some time. He turns away and walks towards his kitchen. You can hear a teapot whistling, as though he'd be preparing for your arrival. You enter his home, unsure of what to do next. This gentle, unassuming man is not quite what you expected. Nigel's home is a mess of old notes, books, and strange diagrams. Covering the coffee table in his living room is an old faded map, bearing many fold creases and tattered edges. It looks to be an incomplete map of the catacombs beneath Paris. Hint, hint, hint. Or at least a section of it. Mr. Engram returns moments later with hot tea and a plate of cheese and crackers. I assume you're here to find the path to Carcosa, he asks, wearing an excited grin. You shake your head in response, but he doesn't seem to notice. He paces back and forth around the room and speaks rapidly. He told me that you would be arriving soon, that I should prepare. Nigel turns towards you as he reaches the wooden door across from you, his eyes flashing. Don't worry, all is ready. The way is paved. He opens the door to his study and steps inside, leaving you behind to interpret his cryptic comments. You wait a few minutes for him to return, but when he does not, you begin to worry. Then you notice that mould has already begun to grow over the cheese he brought you. Mr. Engram, you call out, and you hesitantly knock on the door to his study. There's no response. When you enter the room, you find him hanging from the ceiling fan, his body rotting from weeks of decomposition. So you're recording your campaign log that you found Nigel Engram. You get a mental trauma from the shock of the discovery. You earn additional experience, gain insight into the machinations of the tattered king. You remove all of the symbols, and then you add 2 tablet tokens to the chaos bag. Yes. So it's clear that Nigel Engram is just a step along the way. He's not the end.
Yes.
He's in some ways he's just been dangled in front of you to get you to this next stage. But it does tell you about the catacombs. I think in both of them it talks about the catacombs, doesn't it?
Does.
Yeah, the incomplete map. So it gives you, unlike Resolution 3, it gives you a direction for where you need to go next. But yes,
I quite like what you touched on earlier about the fact that you recognise him from the secret meeting because of that silver cane. But then the way this plays out, he's been dead for ages. So actually,
yes.
Have you imagined this conversation as you've walked in on his house?
Yeah,
interesting.
It's
very
or
clever
have you
the way it's all.
Exactly, or was he there and you've been sitting there for months? Like it's really it's very, very unsettling because you just don't know what's really going on. Exactly, it's fantastic.
So in my head, I was thinking that one was the inverted commas good resolution, but the fact that you take a trauma maybe indicates that it wasn't. You get 2 extra XP out of it. You get tablets in the bag instead of cultists, and I can't remember from the next scenario which one's better or worse. Usually the elder thing is the worst token, isn't it? So that's what you get with the R3.
Yes.
And the defeat, which we haven't read yet.
Yes. But I think the idea is, I mean, the whole thing with Carcosa is madness leads to insight. I mean, it's a classic Lovecraftian thing that you can only really know what's going on once you go absolutely mad. So in a way, R2 is the best one because you're getting insight into what's going on, but it's turning you slowly mad in the process. So yeah.
I'll just take the final resolution then. So that was, if no resolution was reached, each investigator resigned or was defeated. I can't remember there being a resign option, but I guess it could be I'm out of here or something like that.
Yeah, or you just defeated, you know.
Yeah. You lose track of yourself within the city as you flee for your life. Your feet move of their own accord. The beating of sinewy wings and screeching of creatures above you spurs you onward. Soon you'll find yourself running down a narrow avenue, passing a set of heavy iron gates. Again, you're in a dead end, a court with tall old houses on either side. You turn back towards the entrance to find the shapes of many winged creatures barring your path. They are perched on the gates and on the balconies above, awaiting your doom. Walking with cold, sinister confidence, the man in black opens the iron gate and enters the court. His face gleams in the darkness. His eyes pierce your soul. For a moment you recognise him for what he truly is. It is the last you remember of that night. Recording your campaign log that you did not escape the gaze of the phantom. Swap the symbols from the chaos bag for 2 elder things. And again, mark that you slayed Jordan if you did and gain your victory points. So yes, that is ultimately the worst resolution.
Yeah, I mean, one and 3, you get no insight whatsoever. You don't find Nigel. You're defeated by the organist, the Phantom, either way, and so you never get to meet him. But what you won't know if you've only played it once is even if you meet him, there's no real resolution because ultimately it doesn't matter because it's not about him. He can't answer anything. You're just being led, like it said, like a dog on a leash. You're just being led to the next thing, and he's just part of getting you to that next piece. So
yeah. And also, what we don't know at this point is what is the impact of you not escaping the gaze of the Phantom, or
exactly
the impact of you were unable to find Nigel, or you found his house, or you found him. So yes, that's all to come, I guess.
And of course, that 1 and 3, you don't know about the catacombs, so you don't know where to go next. So the next scenario, I'm sure, will have a way to get you there, but it doesn't. You don't know.
Yeah, I think it's going to vary the intro, isn't it? I think on the next one. I think it's a great scenario. Yeah, I really like this one. I particularly like the way it plays out completely differently depending on which version of the act that you've got. Just a simple thing of just swapping out the 2 act cards with the same locations, with the same, different version of the enemy. It's a completely different experience, whether you're chasing or being chased. What about you?
Yeah, like you, I think that. I mean, it's a really strong scenario because it really has a very strong sense of place in Paris, which is dripping with atmosphere from that perspective. And it's great the way, like you say, there's these sort of 2 versions of it, which very much dial into the choices that you've made in the past between the 2, and they play out very differently. And also, what I really like is that it undercuts the payoff that you get in scenarios like this, usually where when you find the quest, this is a quest to find Nigel. Even when you do find Nigel, there's no satisfactory resolution at all because he's either dead or he's not there. And so it doesn't leave you with that satisfaction of, I found the thing. I found the secret room. I've whatever it is. It really undercuts that in a very satisfying way because it leaves you no clear about what the hell is going on, really. Yeah. Which is really,
and even
fantastic.
If you get the positive resolution where you think you found Nigel, did you really? You've just found his body, and you might have just imagined a conversation with him.
Exactly. And I think this is why I really love this campaign, is because it does undercut those expectations and leave you really doubting and wondering what's going on, which is really essential for kind of horror in that sense. The only thing I would say is that I think, not from a mechanical gameplay perspective, but just from a story's perspective, being chased rather than you chasing the organist, it's hard to see how that works in terms of finding Nigel Ingram.
Yes,
that's the only thing. Is it a big deal? No, it just feels just hard to kind of square that circle. That's the only kind of.
Yeah, so it's a little contrived, isn't it? That at the end of 3 days of being chased or imagining you're being chased, you happen to be at the right location. Like you said when we were talking about it, if you're following the organist. Yes, it does make sense that he may actually end up leading you where you want to go.
Exactly. So it feels like a sort of a chase. And also, I think the one where you're being chased is quite a bit more difficult, I think, because he really hits like a truck. And
yes.
As we found, it doesn't take long if you've got a couple of Biakis on the table and him and Jordan Perry. You're getting through 3 nights is actually really, really tough.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like where in Midnight Mass, I think I mentioned last week, in Midnight Mass, there's like a little kind of one-way corridor at the top of where you can kind of, if you're being chased, you can kind of get there and run away. In this one, you're always just only 2 locations away from everyone. And Swift Biakis and the organist, they move 2 locations, right? they're sort of on you. So it's quite tough. So it feels a little bit unbalanced between the two, but I think these are small things. I think that's a great scenario. Really, really great. And also the idea of going into the catacombs, it sets things up. Like, definitely. Wow, that just sounds really great as well.
So we've gone around the Paris overground, and now we are going underneath it in the next scenario. Could it get any creepier?
Exactly. So I think that's everything. So
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So thanks very much, everyone, for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Keep sending in those emails and comments. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, tell us how wrong we are on some of our interpretations.
Exactly. We really appreciate that because, of course, this is a campaign that's open to a lot of interpretation. So, so we'll be back next time to do, what's it called? I don't remember what
the Pallid Mask.
The Pallid Mask. Yes, back to do the Pallid Mask. So, yes, until then, I'm CrabbyTerror8.
And I'm Kevling.
I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We'd very much like to hear from you. If you would like to send us your thoughts, send it to ftextpodcast@gmail.com. That's FTEXT podcast, ftextpodcast@gmail.com. You can also listen to this podcast on YouTube. Just go to Out of Ammo, Out of Time, and you will find it there. And it's also available on the usual podcast platforms, iTunes, Google Podcast, that kind of thing. So if you want to subscribe, go there. But until then, I'm CrabbyTerror8, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks. Bye.